Your top story at noon. As Tshwane burns, government has issued a strong warning that all those destroying property will face the law. Well, the warning comes amid continuing and escalating violent protests in Tshwane. The demonstrations and protests have been directly linked to the ANC's mayoral candidate nomination for the city of Tshwane. Protesters have told our reporters that they are against Toko Didiza as the face of the party for the Tshwane elections come August. Meanwhile, Tshwane Mayor Mayorship has distanced himself from the violence and appeals for calm. The government has condemned the outbreak of violence and the destruction of property and appealed for calm in all areas around the city of Tshwane and the peaceful resolution of differences.
Government condemns in the strongest terms the outbreak of violence and destruction of property which has occurred in areas in the city of Tshwane. We appeal for calm around the city to create an atmosphere where constructive dialogue is possible. Law enforcement agencies are hard at work to put the situation under control, and we urge communities to cooperate with them to ensure the safety of all citizens.
Well, the situation continues to be volatile in townships around Tshwane with reports of sporadic violence. 3 vehicles were torched this morning in Attridgeville. The protest action turned violent in Attridgeville, Mamelodi, Soshanguve as well as Hammanskraal, where police have resorted to firing rubber bullets to disperse protesters. Police have been deployed in troubled areas attempting to calm the situation, but some roads are still blocked, leaving commuters stranded. Protesters are also adamant that Mayorship should be announced as the mayoral candidate.
We're not happy with the decision that the NEC took, but Rabatlo Romela the message to the NEC: there will be no vote without Sputla. That is clear. We can't allow a mayor or clean 100% reports. Outline everything. Say budget the next thing I remove we who somebody or sa reside mo gae. O sa itse dinyakwa tsa rena. O tshwentse go rakre dinyakwa tsa rena. O tshwentse a romele di council. We need a councillor. We need a mayor. O tlo reng a fitla a kgone thewa a kgone tsena strat. We're not fighting with Duduza. We don't want Duduza mo Tshwane. Duduza must go back to Eastern Cape. Thank you.
So very suspicious yesterday afternoon because of there were 15 people, ANC and COSAS. They banned buses. It's so much suspicious. It's more than 23 buses. We want him back because he worked very hard for Tshwane.
It's really disappointing because now I'm using a bus to go to work. I've got my ticket, I can't go to work. It's really a disaster for myself. Now I'm standing here, I don't know what to use because I don't even have money to go to work now, presently, as I'm speaking.
Last night I always do something. I have my business there, and then if the buses is staying like this, I can't work. It was a lot of people. It was many people to make it those things.
Residents took to the streets on Monday night after the African National Congress named former Minister Toko Didiza as mayoral candidate for Tshwane. The protesters demand current Mayor Mayorship be the mayoral candidate. Over 22 auto packs and Putco buses were torched in Mamelodi. A clinic is also reported to have been burnt down. The entrance to Attridgeville from WF Nkomo Road has been blocked with burning tyres and rocks. Joining us via phone line is Nkeke Kana, a Gauteng ANC spokesman. A very good afternoon to you. Thank you very much for your time. What do you make of these sporadic outbursts and protests currently taking place in Tshwane?
Well, we spent the entire night going to various areas where there's been this violence, trying to get to the bottom of it, and we can only conclude that there is an opportunistic element and political staggering that has taken advantage and are destabilizing the community. So what we are doing as the leadership of the province and the regional leadership is to go and meet our own structures throughout the region, encourage them to work with other community leaders and the law enforcement agencies to isolate these elements that are taking advantage of the situation in Tshwane, to destroy property, to be violent. We want our townships to stabilize. We want them to continue to function normally. And those disciplined members of the ANC who have particular concerns regarding the list processes and the mayoral identification process must raise them internally and not in the streets. There is no justification for violence whatsoever and the destruction of property.
Thank you very much for giving us your views there. And Kenke Kekana, ANC Gauteng spokesman, with regards to the current protests taking place in various areas across Tshwane. Well, continuing here, joining me in studio is political analyst Tsepo Khadima. Very good afternoon to you, sir. We thank you very much for your time. In having a look at it upon first glance view, of course, we've heard ANC Gauteng spokesperson referring to possible opportunistic elements that are now entering. Upon your first glance, what do you make of the situation?
Well, my own observation is this, and I would perhaps maybe quote Oliver Reginald Tambo, the former president of the African National Congress, who said that, comrades, we must learn to tell the truth to ourselves, even if the truth is the same as held by the enemy side or the enemy camp. And clearly things have fallen, the wheels have come off, and that is the reality. And also I would like to quote Norman Schwarzkopf, who said that no organization can get better unless the leadership accepts that something is wrong. And clearly something is wrong, that it would appear that nobody foresaw what is eventuating before our very eyes, that the process of nominations, before even there is an election, a simple nomination can bring us to this level of violence, this level of destruction of property. And what is even more worrying, as I was mentioning earlier in the day, is the fact that it would appear that the national leadership, the provincial leadership, as well as the regional leadership of the African National Congress, they are too caught by surprise as all of us. And leadership is urged, the ability to anticipate the situation and be able to come up with proper mechanisms to be able to avoid what would have otherwise be a very bad situation as we are currently seeing. So this is certainly, I think, it is not good for our democracy. It is not good for South Africa. And my own observation is that the mere fact that we are continuing to see the leadership still really talking to the people from the comfort of press rooms or from media rooms, that is not enough. One has to look back to just over 23, 24 years ago, where in the pre-dawn of democracy, again we saw a lot of political violence, where again there was a third force, as at the time was said. So when they now speak about the opportunistic elements that are taking advantage of this situation to then engage in criminality, this is just a repeat of a horror movie that we saw just over 20 years ago. What are we saying? I'm saying, well, the leadership actually needs to demonstrate that edge by being there with the people and address them face to face so that they can be able to say, we hear, but this is the reasons why we took the decisions that we took. And lastly, I know that you have to go. What also worries me, of course, is the fact that the law enforcement agency and the South African Police Service in this particular case, clearly there's been a failure of crime intelligence work. By now, they should have been knowing, they should have been arrested, and the acting National Police Commissioner should have addressed the nation to put the nation at ease. Mr.
Khadim, I'm going to ask you just to hold it there. Let's gauge in and see what is actually happening on the ground. I'm going to ask you to also look at the screen in front of you. ANN7's Lerato Motsa joins us from Hammanskraal. We do know that this is one of the 4 places that is currently being affected by the protest. Very good afternoon to you, Lerato. Take us through the situation on the ground.
It's a bit calmer now, I must say, in Hammanskraal, especially in South, the township, there is timber. However, I must mention that the police are currently meeting with the leadership of the ANC. Now behind me, we've got members of the ANC who are actually disgruntled, joined by members of the community. They are saying that they will be marching to the local police station, demanding for the release of 4 people who were earlier arrested for public violence.
With regards to that and the meeting within ANC leadership in that area, what sort of word have you gotten, whether it's from municipal officers in the area or possible SAPS officials?
The ANC leadership has indicated already that the executive mayor, Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, is on his way already to this area to come and address these disgruntled ANC members. He will be at the Mandela Community Wall where that meeting will be taking place. Currently, where we are, it's at the municipal offices in the area.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Lerato Motso, just giving us an update as to what's actually taking place in Hammanskraal. It seems to have simmered down, sort of, and they are waiting for Kgosientsho Ramokgopa to make his way to the area. Let's just have a look at the views coming from the actual residents and the community members, and they say they feel they're not being heard. They're saying they are happy with Kgosientsho Ramokgopa. There's no reason why he should not be elected mayoral candidate once again. They've seen changes in the past 5 years, and they're happy because he's a man who grew up in Attridgeville. He knows the area and he knows the concerns. Is possibly the ANC or the leadership in the area not actually taking into account what the residents in the area want?
I think probably maybe this is a strategic inflection point for the leadership of the African National Congress, and more so in terms of the members of the ANC who participate in the structures of the ANC, that to what extent do they understand the values and the processes and the traditions of the African National Congress, and more so in terms of how the leadership. Now, when you look, for example, the nomination of, in this case, a mayoral candidate, in 2007, rather, at the Polokwane conference, the African National Congress took a resolution on the process of how the nominees would therefore be nominated, whereby the regional executive would then come up with 3 names with the approval of the PEC. But clearly, as we can see, the members on the grassroots seem not to have been aware of this resolution that is almost 10 years that it was first taken, that their expectation was never that they would, therefore, the candidate that they nominate from the branches would most certainly be the nominee for the party. So that again, I think it should be worrying for the leadership of the ANC to say, well, what has gone wrong? How is it that the members seem to be detached from understanding the values and the traditions? And of course, now everything that they are doing, they are acting with under the auspices of the African National Congress, because they say we are protesting as members in good and regular standing. And that should worry them to say, well, how can a member who's in good and regular standing be able to engage in this type of conduct? Also, for me, what is, looking on, what should be worrying is the fact that it doesn't seem like the leadership is able to say, have influence and be able to control what is really happening on the ground. And that, I think, is something that the ANC needs to really take this as a national problem and not just for Tshwane.
Definitely. Let's gauge it now with our reporter, Simpiwe Mgomezulu. She's joining us from Attridgeville. We do also know this is a hugely affected area, both residents trying to get in and out of the area. A very good afternoon to you, Simpiwe. Of course, many woke up to the images of fire, burning buses, as well as SAPS officials also being deployed to the ground. What is the situation in Attridgeville as we stand just past noon?
Yes, a good afternoon to you and a good afternoon to our viewers. Indeed, there are many who have been impacted by some of the protests that have taken place today. They do say it is when the elephants fight that the ants will suffer. I am actually joined by one student, a grade 10 learner, who's been amongst those who've been affected by this protest. Of course, they had difficulties making their way to school this morning, and also they've had to make alternative arrangements just coming back from from school because of some of these protesters who have barricaded the roads. Good afternoon to you. Can you tell me what experiences have you come across while trying to get to school and come back? How has this protest affected you as a student who lives in Atteridgeville?
Well, this has truly been one thing that was horrific because our transport couldn't come and get us because the roads are blocked. We couldn't even catch a taxi because we were thinking, you know what if you catch a taxi then something can happen. So we had to take alternative routes to get to school, which we got late at school and then things didn't just go well. Yes.
And how did you end up arriving at school if all of the transport, the public transport, was not available?
Well, we got left by one of the students' parents. He was driving a truck, so he lifted all of us at the back. So then that was the only way we could get to school, actually. So, yeah.
And what happened? Did this parent come across any problems in trying to get to school? Was he approached by any protesters, or was everything smooth sailing?
Well, he was threatened by one of the protesters, which he was saying that if you guys don't go back, then this will not end. So then the driver said, you know what, there's kids at the back who need to write exams, and then they need to get to school. Then they let them pass. So if it wasn't for him talking that we have kids, then we wouldn't have went to school. So yeah.
There you have it. That was just a grade 10 learner amongst those who've been affected by this protest. Of course, experiencing difficulties in getting to school. You can imagine if even school buses were being stopped and barricaded from making their way. This is exam period, so it's a very critical time for learners such as the one I have just spoken to, for them to be at school and make it there and be in time for their exams. As things stand right now, they have calmed down a lot since some of the looting that earlier on. We did see very large brigades of police finally making their way into the township to try and perhaps restore order. We saw them dispersing into various parts of Atteridgeville, but at this current moment in time, the roads remain barricaded. The protesters have since calmed down. I'm sure they must be very exhausted, keeping in mind that these are people that have been protesting from well into the early hours of the morning until now. At this current moment in time, they're just sitting on the side of the road. I don't know what they'll be waiting for or when they'll be coming up. They have said that they are also anticipating that some of the ANC leaders will be coming to also address them. Earlier on, we saw a DA mayoral candidate for Tshwane just making his way here, Solim Simanga, that is also saying that he wanted to just ensure that ANC problems do not affect this community, and that the man on the street is also not a casualty of some of what has happened today.
Let's hold it there. Simpiwe Mgomezulu giving us updates from Atteridgeville. Well, the opposition parties are weighing in on the unrest in Tshwane. The EFF has said that this is part of the demise of the ruling party in the capital city. The DA has condemned the violence. Reports say EFF spokesperson Boyisen Ndlozi has said no mayoral candidate can save the ANC in Tshwane at this stage. Ndlozi said while the violence has put the ANC in a very tight spot, it is also preventing other political parties campaigning in the townships at a very critical time. He called on the ANC to get its house in order so other parties can also election their campaigns in the townships. The DA's mayoral candidate for the Metro, Solim Simanga, decried the violence in the townships.
We really much would like to condemn this violent activities that are taking here and elements of criminality that are taking here. And we are saying that it's very much disappointing that the ANC's leaders up to now haven't really been on the ground to come and address the people. From yesterday, I mean, I've drove around, I actually spoke to the provincial and the national commissioner, informed them of the intel about what is being planned on being banned and what is going to happen. Those are the leaders that should have been here on the ground today to ensure that all those things are not happening. But that never took place, and this is why we're ending up with a situation like this.
Still with me in studio, I'm joined by Tsepo Khadima, political analyst, as we have a look at the situation currently taking place in Tshwane. Of course, those various areas being affected, Atteridgeville, Hammanskraal, as well as some of the other areas we have been showing to you. Coming back to you and having a look at some of the sound clips there coming from political parties, let's have a look at how this has all unfolded just before elections are set to take place.
Yeah. Look, certainly I think it should be worrying for us in terms of the whole country. And for the ANC, as an incumbent government, there's even a greater responsibility and duty on them to ensure that we can have a peaceful election, because they are the ruling the governing party, and at the same time the importance that the ANC plays in the lives of many. And I think it is correct that the observation that the leadership of the ANC is supposed to be on the ground, the national leadership, because this is a national crisis. But also I think what should be worrying them more is the sort of expectation by the rank and file members, if I could use that term, who have got this expectation that perhaps mayorship of Tshwane is a birthright for one individual, and in this case, the incumbent Hosien Tsoramokgopa. And that is very unfortunate for them, because ordinarily they should have been in a position where they can communicate that any of the ANC members who are in good regular standing, whenever they are given a task, they can be able to execute it according to the wishes and the norms and that which the party wants. Now, you have the residents on the one hand believing that only one person is fit to be a mayor. And obviously the unfortunate thing that I think we see coming out, there's some members of which would be tribalism, which is actually very, very challenging. That there's this expectation that in Tshwane you cannot have a Nguni speaker who will be mayor, forgetting that in fact Father Smangaliso Mkhatshwa, who was the mayor from 1996 of the new metro, he himself, even though he's come from Soshanguve, he's an Nguni speaker. So those are some of the challenges that the ANC needs to be able to address. The other point that I want to touch on, particularly regarding to what the police, and I think that the police have released a statement in that regard. But for me, my observation is this: what would have been good is that the acting National Police Commissioner, Khomotso Phahlane, should have been on the ground at the scene with his police officers, really working together with the leadership, the national leadership of the ANC in this case, to ensure that this is quelled down. Because one looks at it that if we are not able to manage the situation in Tshwane, where there's been such destruction of property, more than 40 buses touched, clinics touched. What if this was now to escalate countrywide? Will the police be able to handle it? And it doesn't appear like the police will be able to bring about peace and order as is expected of them. And that is very unfortunate. It should worry every South African.
Definitely. Well, earlier crossing to our reporter, Lerato Motsa in Hammanskraal, she was mentioning that SAPS deployment that was coming into the area. Very good afternoon to you once again, Lerato. Have you heard any sort of interaction? Have you been able to engage with what has been said between some of the ANC leadership as well as the SAPS officials on the ground?
Yes, the protesters behind me are still awaiting word from the ANC leadership with regards to the release of those 4 people that were actually arrested this morning for public violence. However, I must mention that earlier when we spoke to the ANC leadership here, they indicated that no Hosien Tsoramokgopa, no vote from them. They are saying that clearly they will not be voting in the upcoming elections if Hosien Tsoramokgopa does not get back into his position.
Thank you very much. Giving us the updates there, Lerato Motsa, as well as Simpiwe on the ground there in Attridgeville, taking us through some of the engagements and the updates that have happened throughout the course of the morning. Coming back to studio here and having a listen in what she has said from community members there, they still don't seem to get it, because now they're saying, well, if Hosien Tsoramokgopa is not going to be the mayoral candidate, then we won't be voting. Also having a look at some of the mentions coming in on Twitter feeds there, some members, even some ANC members also saying if Hosien Tsoramokgopa is not reinstated or put as a mayoral candidate, they'll be voting for the DA. And then if we compare the statistics from the previous municipal elections, and we saw that minimal decline of what the ANC had in Gauteng, do we feel that this could possibly, and other incidents like this, can affect the ANC percentage vote in the upcoming election, specifically in Gauteng?
Look, this certainly is going to affect their performance in the upcoming local government elections for one simple reason. This violence and all this bickering is not good for the ANC because they are not consolidating and being able to deal with the real issues on the ground as to what is the purpose of local government, why the people should be voting, and exactly what they should be. So they are not able to campaign. They are spending a lot of time not able to manage the intent. So that is not good for them. And I think they should be worried at all levels to say, how will we do in this coming election? And the mere fact that you still have a lot of people who say, well, if there is no Hosienso as the nominee for the mayor, we're not going to vote, it should worry them even more because there's that expectation whereby maybe perhaps a personal brand of one individual has created an impression whereby it's like the individual is above the organization, whereas actually the ANC is more of what, in terms of we have safety in numbers, whereby there is a leadership collective and not any one individual who should carry the aspiration. So it should certainly worry them. And to put it, as I say, again, mayorship or any position should not be like a birthright. There should be no political royalism as if that is the case. But certainly it is worrying. But for us as a nation, as a country, we should even be more worried because this problem, the destruction of violence, not only affects the African National Congress and its members, but it also affects the citizens, the residents of Tshwane, but also economically. When you see the destruction of property, economic property for that matter, buses that are, if you've got more than 40 buses, well, what are you going to do with the number of commuters who rely on that? So it is certainly worrying, and I hope that the leadership of the ANC can really take serious consideration and start to be on the ground and address the people to arrest the problem from the whole country.
Definitely. Thank you so much for your time here in studio, political analyst Tepo Khadiba, as we unpack that violence and some of the protests taking place in and around Tshwane.